Everybody, and welcome back to my channel. In this video we are going to discuss some of the important like propagation exception propagation, and we will understand use of throw and throws keyword. Okay. We have already seen the try and catch block. If you haven't seen those videos, so I will strongly suggest you to see those videos. Okay. Now we are going to handle throw and throws. Okay. Suppose if you have written a method m2 in Java, m1 method in Java, which is calling m2. Okay, method, and m1 is calling by main method. Okay, in Java. And suppose there is an exception occur in the m2 method. Okay, if exception is not handled here, then it will be traversed to m2. It will be traversed to m2. Okay, m1, sorry, m1, from m2 to m1. And if still we haven't handled here, then it will move to main. And if you haven't handled here as well, then it will simply goes to the JVM, and JVM will handle that exception now. Okay, using the runtime entities. Okay, so what I'm saying is this is propagation happens in the Java. If suppose if m2 has handled those exceptions, then there is no need of there will not be the propagation of the exception. If it is handled, code is perfectly fine. But if you haven't handled, then it will getting propagated to the different method. Okay, now we have says that, so there you can use the throw and throws. What happened? Suppose suppose method does not handle the exception, so you need to use throws keyword with the method to say that there is an exception. Okay, suppose IO exception is there, so you will write that IO exception. So whenever method hasn't handled those exception, then it will be notified to m1 through the throws keyword. Okay, now if you have m1 method, okay, then m1 will handle the exception in the same way. If the m2 is not handling the exception, then I can simply say throws here. Okay, and the throws keyword will simply going to throw the exception to the main method, and so on. And if main method does not handle those exceptions, then it will also use the throws IO exception. So okay, IO exception kind of thing. So throws keyword is generally called by the method and used beside the method. Okay, but in the case of throw keyword, if we have throw keyword with us, then what will I do? Suppose there was a method m2, and you try to handle, if there is a arithmetic exception occur there, then you will simply say throw arithmetic exception. Okay, sorry, there will be new. So after throw keyword, we write an object. Okay, object of a class, and generally throw is called inside the method. Okay, let's understand in the better manner through an example. Suppose you have a method, suppose m2 is a method you have, and in this method what is happening? If there is a division is going on here. So suppose there is a int a and a b, and you taken the value as a as a 1 and b as a suppose 0. So we can simply write that try catch block in the try, and in this try we will simply use the throw keyword, and we will simply this is the when there is division is going on, then we can simply say that throw the arithmetic exception here, and in this exception handling we'll simply write what something like divide by 0. What happened here is that this is a once again there should be a new, and then after the class name, and it has a constructor which is going to take the string as an argument. Okay, so and it is going to throw by that, and if it gets thrown, then it will use throws arithmetic exception. Okay, there are a lot of things we have to take care here, that suppose sometimes there is a two kind of exception we have. Exception is of two type. One thing is a checked and one is unchecked. We have already discussed that. So if we have a checked exception, then it is a mandatory for us to use a throws keyword if that exception is not been handled. But if there is an unchecked exception, so this is optional. Okay, in this case of this is optional. It will be thrown to the calling method like m1 automatically, if you automatically as well. Okay, so this can be done. Let's understand this concept through coding part. Okay, so let's do that here. What I will do here is simply in this coding video, I will call a method, and which will happen there is suppose you are calling a m1 method, and m1 method suppose okay, and m1 method is taking the int a comma b, right? Okay, sorry, ab, and in the main method you actually have int a equal to 1 and b equal to 0 per sec. Okay, so m1 is what exactly m1 is doing. If you make another method here which is static and void, and it is a m1. Okay, we need to define this method. So we have int a, then int b, and within the method I am calling another method which is m2 here, m2. Okay, so m2 is there, and what happening in the m2 is also, suppose m2 is also taking the a and b from here, a and b as an input. Okay, now we have points to we can write static void and m2 here, and in this m2 we are going to take the two parameter int a and b, and in this body we will simply, what I will say, I will simply dividing it by suppose if we are writing that if try, okay, try, and b is a 0, so we are trying to divide it by 0. Okay, so let's do that by suppose we are dividing int c. We are not using a okay, let's do that. C equal to we can say a divided by b. Okay, and we can write a finally here for we are not handling though that that exception. So in the finally we are simply writing that system dot out dot println, and I'm writing that this is m2. Okay, and we are again copying this part, and we are writing here, we are in the M1. Okay, and again we are calling here, we are within main. Okay, to check that propagation of so save it and compile it code. First of all, we write a clear here, and then I will try to compile it. How I will compile? I will simply write java c exception handling .java, and then java exception handling, and you see here what happening. First thing, we have calling main. Okay, after main have called, after that m1 has executed, then m1 has called. Okay, and then m2 has executed. So what I'm saying is that and after the m2 we can able to let's say we have make us some mistake here. We need to call this is m2. Okay, and after the calling the m2 we need to call here, otherwise whenever the m2 will uh, execute, it will there. Okay, so after the calling the function or method, we will say that let's see, check the examples once again. Output java c compiling and executing. So you see here what is happening. M2 has occurred. Okay, but then after what happened, you haven't actually, why M2 is running here. You can see that M2 is running because the finally block executed whether or not exception being handled. Okay, after that it moved to the M1, and M1 hasn't M1 hasn't handled it. So after calling M2, it directly passes the exception to the main, and main is also not uh, handling the exception. So program abruptly terminate after m1. Here he in this method, in the m1 method, m2 abruptly what happened, terminated, and control come back to main, and after the main calling m1 is also giving some exception, so program will terminate it abruptly, and this is now handled by the jvm. So this is the propagation of that. So you can ask me that how to use, if I use, suppose instead of that, let's use throw exception. Throw is exception. So throw, we know that throw keyword is used within the method, and that throw, after the throw we write an object. So I will write new, and there is a arithmetic exception. So arithmetic exception here. Okay, and in the arithmetic exception we will simply pass the string that let's say divide by 0. Okay, and in this now I am going to handle the method in m1 in the main method. So try, and we are using the catch, and in this catch we know what is a kind of exception. It is a arithmetic exception. Okay, in this arithmetic exception body we will simply write something like what simply what e. Okay, e, there is exception as a name as a e, we need to pass the variable as well, and I will simply print the value of e in this. Okay, so we have used the throw keyword here. So if we have used the throw keyword here, then what will happen after throw? We will simply, this is a kind of unchecked exception. So ch unchecked exception. So if it is unchecked, then we can simply say that we need not to give the throws keyword, if we, whether or not we give, if we suppose give the throws keyword here, throws arithmetic exception. exception here. So let's do throw the exception. So let's save it and try to compile it from here. So compiling it, and we are arithmetic exception catch. What is happening? Exception handling, arithmetic exception is arithmetic exception, and it is not exception excepti should be there. So let's save it and compile it again. So and now execute it, and you know here what's happening. You see here, first of all, m2 is we execute the finally keyword of method m2, and after that we move to directly m2 has not handled it, so we simply skip the system.out of m1, and we will, when we come back to main method, then we are handling the exception using the try, so that this is the main is actually running here. So this was something else. What we are actually saying, want to say you that we are using here throws, and in the m2 we have skip this throws. Here we haven't used, okay, here we haven't used the throws. So if there was a problem, then it should have thrown exception, okay, but it is not throwing exception. So that's why we can say that in the case of unchecked exception, throws keyword is not mandatory. If suppose if I am say here throw here IO exception, which is checked exception, so I will simply write IO exception here, and let's see, it should throw error because we haven't used the throws keyword here. It should. Let's compile it, and it, see here, actually IO exception is unchecked. It is checked, okay, and let's see that IO exception. So if I write here the throws, need to import java.io.star. Let's do it here, okay, and let's save it and compile it. And now it's perfectly working fine. It has actually what happened, it has so what we are what we are trying to say there, that IO exception is a not an exception which is unchecked, means it is going to check by the compiler, and compiler, on the checking by the compiler, it needed to be using the throws keyword with the method, because those method will check those keyword, and we are doing fine. Absolutely, we know that throws keyword is mandatory with the checked exception. And that's it for this tutorial, and